They told you getting into university was the hard part. But what if I told you the real struggle begins after admission? A government sponsored student surviving on 10,000 a month, a private student bleeding 60,000 shillings before the semester even begins. And then there is the off campus student, the ones who live outside, stuck between pay rent or eating lunch. How much does it really cost to survive as a student in Kenya today? The lies, the pressure, the numbers they never published, all exposed in this video. If you're joining university soon or already there, this is the truth they never teach in class. Welcome to the real world. Welcome to campus life in Kenya. Let's break it down. And before we proceed, 90% of people watching this content never subscribe to our channel. If you love this content and if you want it to approach and get to more people, I urge you to subscribe and let's get into it. So, the first things first is to understand the category of students so that we understand what we mean by the cost, because cost is selective. Cost can be, amongst, when we say that the cost of living is high or low, it depends on who exactly you actually refer to. So we have two types of student in most university, that is government sponsored students and the privately sponsored students. Government sponsored students are those admitted to the COOPs, and the tuition is heavily subsidized depending on the bands, and we have already uploaded a video on the HELB, eligible for the HELBs and the bursaries, etc. On the other hand, we have the privately sponsored student, also known as the Module 2 or the self-sponsored students, whereby they pay full tuition fees without government subsidies, limited access to the HELB loans, and they solely rely on the personal or family funding. Okay, so let us also look at the other type of student, on campus versus off campus. So once you decide, or once you get to one side, either you are government sponsored or privately sponsored, now you come to this second category. Are you on campus or off campus? On campus basically means these students live within the campus, they live in their hostels, in short. Whereas off campus means they live within, outside the university, of course, in other, uh, buildings or apartments outside the university. You call them bedsitters, one bedroom, single rooms, whatever you want to call them, and you're going to be looking at those costs just a while. So, how is it? And then some of you might be asking the question, should I stay in the hostel? Should I stay outside? So, let's get to see it. One, proximity to classes and campus facilities. So, we are looking at the on campus, those who stay inside. They have the proximity to classes. I mean, I know at this point you are like, I want to go there and study hard and all these things. So, if you want to be like that kind of a student, then maybe hostel, because you live um just close to the library, to the school, and you use the university resources. Okay, we have inclusive packages. The rent, the utilities, the security, all these essential services are in the overall cost, and we shall see that cost in just a while. Okay, so that is an advantage for you, because you don't pay for these things individually, and they are cheap. Staying in school is way cheaper. Then the structured environment conducive to study, because it provides a focused and supportive atmosphere for students, right? You don't have people visiting you at the time, and you don't have a lot of freedom to do a lot of things. So it is conducive for that study. Well, there is limited privacy and personal space, because you may share spaces. You may go to a campus, to a hostel that it is two people or three or even four, and I've seen others even sharing so many. Okay, so it is limited privacy. So if you're someone who doesn't really care about the privacy issue, then hostel might be for you. There are potential restrictions on visitors and activities. You'll find they will tell you that you have to abide to the rules and regulations. There is no cooking here in some of the hostels, or you are told that by 10 we should not see the other gender visiting here, or you should report by this time. You should pay the fees by this time for the hostel, and therefore those are the potential restrictions that you have to actually prepare yourself for. They may be more expensive than some off-campus options, depending on the location and the amenities. On-campus living can be costlier than off-campus alternatives. Again, this matters where you are. Of course, someone who is paying maybe in a university at the capital can be paying more on the hostel than someone who is living, in a very rural area, just near a certain university in those areas. So that's what it basically means. And you may weigh your options and find out that, oh, maybe even hostels are a bit expensive, but generally hostels are cheaper, way cheaper in terms of the cost. Let's look at the off campus one: greater independence and privacy. I mean, who asks you? If you want to go home at whatever time, I mean, it's up to you. If you want to cook whatever you want to cook, it's up to you. There is no one asking you. If you want to bring whoever, it's up to you. The privacy is there. There's opportunity to choose the preferred living conditions. You'll find maybe you want to live in a more expensive apartment, or you want to live near the road, you want to live near this amenity. It's up to you. You are preferred. But remember, on the other side, they actually place you. They will tell you, go to hostel number this, hostel that. Okay. Potentially lower costs, especially when sharing. You find that comrades are really creative. They will be like, I cannot pay a bed sitter alone. So if a bed sitter goes for 10,000, let's do it. Two of us, we can even share a bed. So you pay 5,000, 5,000 each, and therefore it becomes way lower, even for those living in the hostels. Okay. So when sharing, they can actually lower the costs. Additional responsibilities. Oh my goodness, the cooking, the cleaning, the security. Remember, as I told you, in hostels, maybe you may not be allowed to cook. So we have some hotels out there. I don't call them hotels, but let's just call them food kiosks, whereby you go because they are way cheaper. That is in hostels. But now, if you're living outside, you have to cook your food. You have to do the cleaning. You have to ensure that your security is well taken care of. Okay. So you have to really be an aldert. They call it alderting. Okay. So that you have to ensure that you've got into it. Transportation costs to and from the campus. I mean, if you live too far from the campus, you have to account for that transportation. And sometimes it doesn't matter how far you live. You might find yourself even maybe during rainy days, you have to pay the transport and so forth and so on. So, I mean, you have to incur those additional expenses and so many other expenses. Variable utility and internet expenses, whereby off campus accommodation may have varying utility and even internet costs which students need to budget for. So if you're living outside, you have to pay for the Wi-Fi. If you're living outside, you have to pay for the water, maybe even different from the rent in most of the apartments. You have to pay electricity, which is different from the rent because that is um, an arrangement between you and KPLC. It's about how many tokens you are consuming as an individual or whoever you are living with in that bed sitter or that single room. Okay, you have to pay for the dustbin. I mean, you all that takataka, quote unquote. You also have to pay for so many other things that just come up and you are living all alone. I don't know, you have to pay for the keys of the apartment that you have to get the common keys. There are so many other small expenses that you need to actually abide to. Okay, so let's break a bit of monthly cost breakdown here so that you're able to understand. This is just an example of exactly what you expect at the end of the day. Okay, so the tuition is about 16,000. We took the very lower part of it, and we are comparing between maybe on campus and off campus. This is for the government sponsored student, that is the GSSS. Okay, so if tuition they are paying 16,000 semester, it is basically the same, but the one who is living in campus is paying very low amount when it comes to things like accommodation, because well, for the campus it's way subsidized, but then you find that for the off campus students, they are paying between 8,000 to 15,000. Again, it matters on the location. Okay, of course, there's some places you even pay 7,000 or even cheaper for single rooms, and then for the bed sitters, they are pretty much there around 8,000, 10,000. But again, if you live around the capital, then it becomes even way expensive. You might get even a 15,000 is a bed sitter, or even expensive than that. So it's up to you. Whereas in some places, 8,000 is actually one bedroom. So it matters where you go to study in. That again is very so that cost is relative. Okay. For the food, you might spend 4,000 to 6,000 if you're living on campus, and of course if you're not cooking, because it might be a bit cheaper for that way, but if you have off campus, you can spend more expensive, because remember, when you are in school, you may not really, some of people carry lunch, but majority will prefer to go and eat in those food kiosks that are around the university. So you have to incur the lunch cost, and then you have to go and cook separately the supper. You've not counted the breakfast and so many other food costs. Okay. Transport on those on campus, I mean, It can be 0 to 1,000 shillings. This is a month, remember, because you find that some hostels are not really within the school, they're just a few distance from the school. So you might actually end up incurring maybe 50 bob a day or something of the sort, 50 to and fro. So it might be around, but you might decide, today I want to just enjoy this money. So then there's off campus. There are people who live quite far, and therefore, and off campus can actually mean you also live at home. For those who live at home, I mean, it's even way easier for you because you don't even incur this cost. The only cost you incur is the transport one. Okay, utilities on campus, as you said, they're included. Off campus, you just have to uh incur this cost anyway. Then, of course, internet or Wi-Fi we've talked about. Clothing is not here. You've not even mentioned clothing. You have to know about that. That can be the same on either sides. There are miscellaneous costs. Of course, they are expensive more on those off campus because there are things that come up. And then total on a monthly basis, you might find that someone in on campus spends about 12,000 to 21,000 shillings. That is on campus. And then for the off campus, they might spend way from 20,000 to even 40,000 a single month just because of this. If you count the rent, then you count the upkeep and everything that they have to spend, then you are going to have a bit difficult. Okay, so this is actually per semester, sorry, not per month. It might really stretch on that as well. Okay, so let's look at key observations here. The government sponsored students will benefit from subsidized tuition. Okay, on campus living is generally more affordable for the government sponsored. I think I've really talked about this. The off campus have to be very careful budgeting, and I mean, I've basically covered majority of these. These are just the key observations that you need to uh, take and adhere to as well. So again, I've told you about cost variations by location. If you happen to go to University of Nairobi or even Kenyatta University or those universities around the Nairobi outskirts, you'll have to have higher costs in accommodation and even transportation. Okay, but of course, you have a great access to amenities. You have a wide range of amenities and services, but of course, at a higher cost to students. Lower cost in other towns, I have repeatedly said that. So that's something you have to plan as well. Okay. So additional considerations, of course, there are people who get HELB loans. If you can be able to get HELB loans, this can be gotten by anyone, including the privately sponsored student. You can just apply for the loans to try and have the financial relief, and loan amounts vary based on need and cost of study. Of course, you can look for part-time employment. Some of you are quite free in the weekends, in the long holidays. You can actually save a lot of money at that time, so you can be able to offset these financial issues. You can actually tutor. You can go to your former primary school, former high school, and teach. You can look for campus jobs. Some of the campuses actually give jobs. You can do freelancing. People write assignments, and so forth and so on. Then there is budgeting. You have to be essential because you have to manage those expenses. You don't be given money for rent and then you start betting, and then all of a sudden you start having a rambase here and there. So utilize even budgeting tools. The AI can there and can help you to actually budget these particular things. Okay, so these are things that you have to have ensured that you are good to go. So that brings us to the very end, and I hope that that video has actually opened your eyes and try to see how the real cost of living is in the Kenyan institutions. And by that, we call it off. Remember to subscribe, comment down there, ask any questions you have, so that by the time you are joining, you are good to go. And with that, we call it a day. See you in the next.